Switching focus now, we've been hearing from the mayor of Mariupol, Vadym Boychenko, who's been giving an online briefing about the humanitarian situation in the city. And let's listen to what the mayor of Mariupol had to say just moments ago.
The situation remains dire as it has been, but the city remains Ukrainian. Our heroic defenders are fighting, holding out with incredible valor and bravery, defending the city of Mariupol, but defending our future, defending our homeland, Ukraine. And this has to be made very clear. Their plight is very difficult because they are vastly outnumbered. It's very difficult for them to hold out. When they say they're made of steel, we should also know that steel also has its breaking points, but they are holding out, and the city of Mariupol remains a Ukrainian city. It is also a difficult situation because of the humanitarian catastrophe created by the Russian invaders and their collaborators from the opposition bloc, as they have destroyed the critical infrastructure in the town. There's no running water, no electricity, no cell coverage, and add Russian propaganda on top of that the Russians resort to. This happened at a time when the residents had no information whatsoever. We started attempted evacuation from the very first days of March, but the invaders didn't want to leave out any people. They would intentionally and deliberately shoot the meeting places. They destroyed all the buses that we planned to use for the evacuation purposes in 10 days. They reduced all of that to ashes. The evacuation was never enabled because the enemy thwarted all our efforts. Meanwhile, our residents attempted evacuation on their private vehicles, and the armed forces did relieve them outside the city, but they would only travel to the first checkpoints with a Russian flag flying over it, and they'd be told the following: we haven't received an order to allow passage for any residents of Mariupol. They would have to take a U-turn, and this Russian propaganda would add to the message that you've been abandoned, they've left you. And only on the 13th of April, when the whole world coalesced around evacuation from Mariupol, the evacuation was enabled with private vehicles. When the enemy troops opened the passage through their checkpoints, and people have been able to leave the city, traveling to Berdyansk, Zaporizhia, and from Berdyansk, they've traveled onwards. So this has finally happened then, and now about 150,000 people have been able to leave Mariupol into Ukraine-controlled territories. There are over 100,000 people staying in Mariupol, but 120,000 people are staying in Mariupol. There are also people in the outskirts wanting to evacuate. That's another 60,000 people. So we keep urging every day, every morning to the entire global community that we need to stand together to liberate Mariupol, to evacuate the innocent civilians from Mariupol. The Mariupol stands, and as long as it stands, our country shall stand. Earlier, some negotiations with France, Greece, Turkey were in progress about the international humanitarian missions to Mariupol. Has any progress been made in these negotiations? What came out of these negotiations about the international humanitarian missions? We have to make it clear that the Russian Federation does not seek to support any international mission, and we know clearly why that is so. Either Red Cross or a Turkish mission or any other mission, like a French mission that tried to intervene, they would come to the city and witness firsthand the atrocities abominably created by the Russian troops, the destroyed hospitals, dozens of dead corpses, the razed drama theater, hospital burned to ashes, with heavily injured residents of Mariupol who stayed inside at that point. This is a war. This is a genocide of the Russian-speaking population of Mariupol. This is the war that was launched by a war criminal, Putin, against our society, our nation. And the only he has succeeded in his special operation is razing the city of Mariupol, destroying the Ukrainian population of Mariupol. That he succeeded in. We lost the connection with Mr. Boychenko. Please go on. We can hear you now. We're trying to regain the connection. We lost the signal, unfortunately. Let's wait. We hear the tragic news from Mariupol, as we heard from Vice Prime Minister Vereshchuk. There'll be no humanitarian corridors operating in Ukraine today. And let us test out the connection. Okay, we can hear you fine. Please carry on. And we have more questions for you in store. We have lost that signal again. We are working to reconnect. The Vice Prime Minister Irina Vereshchuk reported that there will be no evacuation corridors in operation today, as the mayor of Mariupol has told us earlier that people have not been able to leave Mariupol driving their own cars. I'm passing the floor to the journalist. We have a question in here. You will hear it interpreted. Over to you.
Greek national television, RT. Do you have evidence that Russian forces dropped chemicals on Mariupol? And is it true that they brought mobile crematoriums?
Firstly, about the war crimes that have been evidenced in Mariupol. The first crime committed on the 9th of March, when the Russian war plane dropped 2 bombs on a maternity ward in Mariupol, where the residents died, women and children. The second war crime was committed on the 16th of March in Mariupol, when another enemy plane dropped 2 bombs on the Mariupol drama theater. And there are many such war crimes that have been documented. We documented the fact of razing our town. 40% of the multi-story building have been reduced to rubble. They're past any repair. And this is pertaining to the majority of people in Mariupol. We have the video records, photographic evidence that are now collected by the relevant agencies of our country. And these are war crimes. The day before yesterday, the Russian troops attempted to strike our city with a chemical attack. They tried to drop the chemical agent on our defenders. The agent did affect our defenders. A few people in the outskirts of Mariupol were also affected. They sensed the sweet taste in their mouth. This warned them in the towns and villages around Mariupol, and people started fleeing from these outskirts of Mariupol because they sensed danger. There's no way to collect evidence of that. A lab would need to do the analysis to make the finding, but the enemy troops and the Donetsk proxies of Russia have stated that they intend to deploy the chemical agents because they cannot defeat our defenders who are defending the city. And they were the first to allege that they had committed the crime. Before that, information was available that there are allegedly some chemical labs in the city developing some chemical agents or weapons. And we knew that they were planning to launch this attack, and this unfortunately has happened.